As we approach 3 o'clock here, we'll give it a couple minutes yet and allow people to get logged in, but we will start the presentation in another 2 minutes. Well, it's 3 o'clock and I haven't seen any more attendees coming on, so I think it's safe to say we could start now. I welcome everybody to the QuickBooks online presentation. Happy to have you here today. I know everybody's working in QuickBooks Online and there's usually questions or things you don't understand how to record, and I'm hopefully here today to help you understand how to record your expenses using the vendors and the different avenues that we have in the QuickBooks Online. I'll start out with introducing myself. I'm Dana Conrad. I've been here with Kerber Rose for 27 years. I work in the accounting and the tax services. I specialize in helping small businesses and individuals. I specifically enjoy helping with the QuickBooks and the different questions people have, and to see the different ways people seem to use the system in recording things when sometimes there's quicker and easier ways. So I want to help you out today with that, just to walk through things, show you something maybe you didn't know. Kerber Rose, this is where all of our locations are. Just a view of if you're near any of those offices, there's always somebody in one of those offices that could also help you with QuickBooks. And if they can't help, they can always direct you to me. Just some engagement tips that I thought I would put out there. If you want to ask questions as we go along, you could use the chat or you could raise your hand. And I'm totally fine with if you have a question when I'm presenting something to go ahead and ask it. We have Sarah hanging out with us from Kerber Rose. Thank her for being here. She's going to help. So if you had a question, she'll let me know. And to share your experience. So if you've encountered something or you're recording something differently than I'm showing, feel free to ask or to contact me later, and I can explain why you're doing it that way, and maybe this is a little better way to do it. And feel free to take some notes, jot some things down, the tips and best practices, because sometimes after you watch a seminar, sometimes you forget things. So it's nice to just take a few notes and to try to remember how to record different transactions and stay connected. I'd be happy to talk with you after the presentation. You can reach out for support. I'll have my email and my phone number at the end of the presentation. With that, I think we'll just go right ahead and start into the live demonstration. I just have to share a different screen so we can get you on the QuickBooks. All right, so I'm starting in a QuickBooks file, and I just wanted to kind of start with bookmarks. We are going to go through the plus create, but the bookmarks is just a quick reference that you can access things faster. So what that means is if I were to go on to the all apps and I click on accounting and I wanted to bookmark my bank transactions, I gray this out. Once it's put a little gray in there, then it will show up under my bookmarks. So it's an area where you can go through and bookmark something that you use quite frequently. What I'm going to do now is we wanted to show people how to do different things under vendors. So we're going to concentrate on expense, check, bill, pay bills, different things that how you pay things, and same with the credit cards. So I'm going to do is click on an expense. And when we click on the expense, the difference between an expense and the check is only the fact that you can print a check, you can't print the expense. So when I go in to create an expense, I can either drop down the menu to pick a vendor, or I can type a vendor. So here I'm going to type in the word Amazon, and it's already created for me. And then the payment account is where I'm going to pick whether I'm using a bank account or a credit card or whatever different accounts you may have, or you may not have any different accounts. You may just have one bank account. And then you're going to use the date. And then you're going to pick a category for supplies. And I've got the settings set on to remember the last time that I paid this vendor. So when I typed in Amazon, supplies filled in for me and the dollar amount filled in. It did that because I told the system to remember the prior time I recorded using this vendor. That is a setting that can be turned off if it confuses people. Sometimes people don't realize why that information popped in there. And sometimes it's helpful because of the fact if I use Amazon a lot and I'm always putting it to supplies, it will continuously help me pre-enter that data for me. The payment method is not a required field, but you're more than happy to use it. The reference number, sometimes people like to put the word ACH in there or the word auto, whatever you feel comfortable doing. You don't, and it's not a required field. The description, if you put a description, it allows you to remember why you purchased this particular supply from Amazon. And also in the memo, you could fill that in. The add attachments, this is where you can go out and actually be able to attach something that the receipt that you've gotten from Amazon or any other documentation that you would need to remember this transaction, or the fact if you get audited 3 years down the road, you don't have to keep the receipt, it's sitting in your QuickBooks for you. There's also the opportunity to bill this to a customer. So if you were using invoicing and you wanted to bill the actual, it allows you to bill it by checking the box. Then when you go to create the box, the item will be sitting there to bill the customer. And then if you attach the receipt here, it will automatically attach the receipt to that invoice. And we can always work on that in a different session or reach out if you were to have questions. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. Going to go to the plus create now and create a check. And now I can use a different vendor, or if my vendor wasn't in there, I could create it. So it's telling me the vendor is not in there. So it's allowing me to add the new vendor on the fly, meaning I don't have to go back to the vendor section and set the vendor up. I'm able to just enter it from here. I click add new. And then now there's the opportunity to fill in the name and contact information if you want to fill in the address because you want to mail the checks. If you had to add any attachments, if it was particularly a contractor for a W-9, you'd be able to add the W-9 here. If it was ACH and you needed to pay the vendor through the system, you can add all the banking information here. And here's the section where you would track if they were needing a 1099 at year end from you. You'd be able to enter in their business ID and then click the box to track for the payment for 1099s. And then there's other information that you can hold for the vendor if you needed to. And I'm just going to hit save now. It's saving that vendor. I didn't enter the address or anything. And then you want to make sure you're choosing the right bank account if you were to have multiple bank accounts for this check. And then the check date, If you're going to print the check, you're going to click the box Print Later, and then you can see the to print comes up. Because this is a new vendor, the category has not been filled in. So I'm going to just type in an expense account. And this particular file I'm using doesn't have a lot of accounts in it. So if it didn't have telephone, I would be able to add it here. So I can hit Add New. Telephone is the account name, and then I just have to pick the account type, this being an expense. The other data is informational here. I don't need to fill any of that out. I'm not going to do that, but sometimes people like to make this a sub account, allowing it to have a main category and then different subs underneath it. And I'm going to hit save. So now I have my category. I can put in that this was the January bill if I wanted, or any description, and then the dollar amount. And when you spell something wrong, spell check is live in here, so it'll put a little red mark underneath it, and then you're able to use the system to spell it correctly. The memo part, then you can print or type on like the invoice number or customer numbers. This allows this to print on the check. If you use checks to print and you use the memo, this will print on the check. The description doesn't print. This is mainly for your system. And again, you can click on the add attachment and you'd be able to add the receipt for Spectrum. Now you can go to the print screen like the queue, or you could print the check right from, you can click right from here. You can also make the entry recurring. There's under more, there's a void, or you can allocate. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. The other option here is save and new. So save and close allows me to save the screen and close it. Save and new means it'll save it and then open up a brand new screen for me. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close, allows it the screen to close. The plus create and now bill. So the bill allows me to enter a bill for Spectrum. The difference between writing the check and the bill is I have the opportunity to change this date. So today is February, but this particular bill that I'm entering is from January. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the bill date as January, and then I can pick the due date. So I could pick today, or I could pick in March, or however this particular bill were to work. So particularly the bill lines up then with the time that the expense happened. I can also pick the terms. So if I do the net 15, it adds 15 to the bill date. And same with if I did the net 60, it added 60 days to the due date. Again, you can fill in the bill number if you feel it's not a required field. Then in the category, that's where I enter in the expense. I can put in a description, I can put in a memo, and I could put in the dollar amount. Now from here, if I were to have the quick payments online through QuickBooks and the ACH information is put in, I would be able to save and schedule the payment. But I don't have that information in, so I wouldn't do that step. But if you had the opportunity to pay your vendors electronically, you can do that by using the bill pay, this section right here. By entering this bill, it allows me to then pay this vendor through ACH. There's also the section over on the left that allows the autofill for the bill. So you could upload the bill into the screen, and then the system does the best job it can to read the bill, looking for the vendor, the dollar amount, and the type of expense it thinks. I don't use that system a real lot because it takes quite a while for it to read it. I would rather just enter the data and then put a copy of the bill in here. And again, you can do it in this section or add attachments, both work. Now I'm going to say save and close because I don't want to schedule the payment, but there's also approvals you could do with bills. Save and new saves this and opens up a new bill. Save and close saves and closes it. The clock in this upper left-hand corner is for prior information. This is a sample company, so there is no prior information. But if I hit the save and new, it saves that transaction and brings up an empty screen for me. If I click on this little clock in the upper left-hand corner, I now can see a prior bill. In case when I was entering things, if I'd made a mistake or put in the wrong dollar amount, I can now click on this bill. It'll bring it up, and then I can make any changes that I have to make. And then I can hit save and new or save and close. From there, from entering a bill, now you have to pay the bill. So when you enter bills and use this part of it, it's a delayed entry. So in other words, it doesn't go right to your check register. It sits in an account called accounts payable. If I were to now go to pay bills, you can now see that the Spectrum bill is in here. It does have the due date, but you can always pay it ahead of time. But you do have to fill in the payment account. So now I have to tell it what bank account I'm using to pay this bill, entering the check number, printing it later. And then I go ahead and I check it, and then I can say schedule payment or save and close. Scheduling the payment is through the bill system, which I don't have hooked up here. I also wanted to touch on if I were to have a credit card and I go to pay a bill. So I went to Walmart and I used my credit card. You can come into here and then you create a credit card account. So if I hit add new, and let's say I just want to call it a MasterCard, and then I were to put down a credit card, save. So now I've created another payment option. So I've got in here the bank account and now a credit card. So when I went to Walmart, I used the credit card. And then again, it remembered the last time that I did this transaction. So that's why it pre-filled this stuff in down here. But then we would put for the payment date, the day we went to Walmart. And you can fill in payment method if you want, not required, reference number, not required. But then the category is where you want to make sure that you put in the correct expense account and then the dollar amount. And again, you can attach the receipt. Now I'm going to hit save and close. Now I have a credit card transaction. There also is a section for receipts that allows you to upload a receipt. So if you went to Walmart, you could have the QuickBooks app on your phone. And with the QuickBooks app, it allows you to take a picture of the receipt and it will upload to this receipt screen. Or you can scan the receipt and you can upload it in here. Once it uploads, it reads it. It reads that receipt to try to figure out if the transaction is in your system yet. So because I already entered that Walmart expense with my credit card, once I upload the receipt, the system will match that receipt to that transaction. They'll tie them together, and then you don't have to go back and attach the receipt because it's going to do it right from the receipt screen. The bank transaction section is where you can connect your bank account or you can connect your credit cards. This section allows you to download activity from the bank. It also makes data entry quicker, but it also causes a lot of confusion. Let's see, I'm having problems today with the sample company of the QuickBooks, but let's see if it works here. The sample company that I'm using here already has bank transactions turned on, and it's got different bank items downloaded. So we're going to go through the bank transactions. So what that means is that we've taken the time to connect our actual bank account to our QuickBooks. And you can see down here that there's some things that got the word match, and then there's some that have nothing. And then there's some that have multiple, where there could be 2 matches. The danger in this is sometimes it doesn't always find a match. So it can download something from the bank and it can't find it in the QuickBooks. That happens a lot with the payroll. It seems that if you run QuickBooks payroll right through QuickBooks Online and the activity downloads from the bank, they don't match up. So this transaction here, this 1,200 for this A rental, it doesn't have a payee and it doesn't know what it is basically what the system is telling us. So we could go ahead and add it, but then if it adds it to this uncategorized expense. If we were to expand it, we can then categorize it and we can change the account number, or we can tell the system to try to look for a match. And then it brings you to a different screen to look for matches. And then you can search by dollar amounts. It's got a preset date range here that you can change to try to find your transaction. But it doesn't always find them. It works pretty good, as you can see by just looking at this screen. There's quite a bit of matched items, but yet there's still some unmatched. If I were to go ahead and add these, I may be duplicating things. And the way we find out if it's duplicated is when we go to reconcile our bank statement. We could have multiple transactions there. So this particular first transaction is a sales receipt that I've entered into the system, and the bank fees has downloaded the dollar amount that went through the bank as a deposit. So is this a legit transaction? If you know your books and you keep track of things, you may know it is legit. If you didn't know, you could always, up in the navigator screen, you could just type in that $55. Don't hit enter, but you just click the 55. And then we can see there's a sales receipt sitting here. If we were to click on that, it's taking us now to the sales receipt section. So a sales receipt has been entered for books by Betsy, and then it's been put into deposited to undeposited funds. So when you do sales receipt or receive payments, you have the option to pick where the money goes directly to. This transaction has told it to go to undeposited funds. If I drop the down arrow, that's where I can see the checking. Undeposited funds is used so that you can combine different dollar amounts that you take to the bank. So if I were to get multiple payments from customers and I'm going to take them all at once to the bank, that's when I would use the undeposited funds, because then when I go to the bank, that dollar amount will match the QuickBooks. And what I mean by that is, so I'm just going to go ahead and record and close. And now if I go to plus create, as you can tell, that's my friend. And then we click bank deposit. So the first part of the bank deposit section is anything that we've told the computer to go to undeposited funds. And then down below is where we can actually make a deposit or use the deposit for a line. But you can see that the sales receipt for books by Bessie is in here. If we were to click it off, we would now be able to send it to the checking account. And what I can also do is check off other undeposited funds, because let's say I'm going to take this $2,117.52 to the bank. It's one deposit. That is how I get all of those 3 payments onto one deposit. When I take it to the bank, it will then be a match. I'm not going to record this here. I'm just going to leave this screen. Leave without saving. only because I'm trying to show that I didn't actually deposit that money through the QuickBooks system. So I told the system I received that payment, but I told it to go to undeposited funds. But when it comes down from the bank, it is all by itself. And the system is recognizing it and it is matching it. So if I match it, it will now take that money and take it out of undeposited funds and put it into the checking account. If I scroll down to here, to this one on January 31st, that it found the match, I can expand it and I can look to see what it did find and verify if that is correct or incorrect. And then I am able to hit match. Once I hit match, it does leave this screen. It's not gone forever because we'll still be able to find it later. But you can click on multiple ones. If I knew all three of these were correct, I am able to check them all off and all at once hit accept. And those three will then leave the screen. But let's say you did check something off by accident and you're like, oh, now it's gone. It's not gone. It's just right now we're in for review. And now we just go to categorize. Categorize just means that we've already accepted it, matched it, edited, or done something like that. So what I'm able to do is to click on this, and then I can say undo. The undo now can put it back to the for review screen. So if I click on for review, they're back in here. I also can check them off, and I could say exclude. So exclude means that the transaction is wrong and what I have in my system is different. But it puts it to the excluded screen and you are able to come in here and undo it. And it goes back to for review. So the tool is very helpful in getting things reconciled quicker because of the fact that you've entered items into the system and now as they clear the bank, they're matching up. It is also a way to find fraud because if something isn't matching up, well, maybe that is not a transaction of yours. It's something that has happened to your bank account. Then you're able to see it quicker right through the bank feed section. There's also the neat little feature that's called rules. So rules in QuickBooks for bank transaction allows you to set something in the system that tells the QuickBooks every time, let's say this hardware store came down, that it always should go to this specific supply account. And then it will not be on the bank transaction screen because it's going to handle it behind the scenes. So if I click on rules, so we'll create a new rule. You don't have to have rules, but sometimes if you continuously go to the same vendors, then it would make your data entry a little quicker, I could say. So if we had, if we just wanted to call something hardware, because we always go to the hardware store. So you just have to name the rule something so you recognize it. You can name it whatever you want. The particular rule here I'm creating is called money out. You can also create rules for money in. And then you're just telling it what account the rule should be applied to. So you can also apply it to the credit card accounts. And then here we tell the rule whether it's a description or a dollar amount or bank text, exactly is or contains. And then you would type in the text that it's looking for, that it's coming down from the bank. And then transaction type will be the expense, because if it's something that's leaving my account, it's money out, so it's an expense. What category do I want this to go to? I can pick supplies or maintenance or whatever is that it should go to, and then the payee. This is where it's looking for the vendor that's coming down from the bank. In this particular entry, I'm just going to use amount, and then I'm going to put it's greater than $1 just to see what is in the system. If I hit test rule, this will tell me if the rule makes sense. So right now it's telling me that there are 22 pending transactions. So what that means is in my bank transaction screen, there are 22 transactions that fit this rule that I've just created. So with the rule, I can tell it to auto add or not auto add. So if it's on, if auto add is on, as soon as it comes down from the bank, it's going to either match it and enter it or just enter it. So these transactions would no longer be on the banking transaction screen to be categorized. They will be already sent into your system. Or you can tell it to be off, and then you would still be required to match it up, but at least it would have this category in it. It would be pre-filled for supplies. The other screen here is there's one for savings, and then there's MasterCard for review. So there's different transactions that are in here, and you can see too here, some have found matches and some didn't. If I click on the squeaky clean car wash, on February 12th, a charge to Squeaky Clean for $19.99 was come through the bank, and then in our system, we entered one on that same day. So these two would match. So I would go ahead and hit match here, but I just want to show that down here, Squeaky Clean also has two matches. If I go back to the one on the 12th and I hit match, now you can see that the second one that was sitting here now has only one match because we got rid of the other one. Reconcile. So with the bank transaction section, reconciling should be made easier. When you go to reconcile, you enter in the ending balance that's coming off of your bank statement along with the bank date, the ending date. And the beginning balance should match the bank statement also. I'm just going to enter in an ending balance, and then I'll enter in the date. And you can enter in 01/31/26. You can also use the calendar. This does tell me there's other things that still need to be categorized. I could do that, or I could just ignore it. I'm just going to ignore it for now. When you come in here, you can see a lot of transactions are not cleared, but yet you can see that some are. So the line that is here with this little manually added from bank feeds tells me that it came down from the bank. It can tell me that the system, it was entered on January 29th and it cleared on January 29th. And then I also know because this check mark is here, the green check mark means it already happened. So it did clear the bank for us. Now this particular squeaky clean thing here is sitting here, but the other two that we had done were sooner than that. But we had done them on the credit card, but here they're sitting in the checking account. So could that be a duplicated entry is what you would have to investigate. Because basically when you do your bank reconciliation, everything should be cleared out of here. If you have things that are not checked off, something's probably wrong. You need to look into that. So for instance, the 1999, if I enter that, you can see there's some credit card charges. There's one on the check. There's one a cash purchase. So whether they did go through the credit card or the checking would need to be researched, because we did see the squeaky clean come down from on the credit card. So we know that that transaction did go through the credit card, but somebody may have entered it accidentally, not using the credit card. So if I were to click on this squeaky clean, taking me to the actual entry, I can see that it's the vendor, same as the other one, but the bank account is checking, but it does say a debit. But we probably did use the credit card. But at the time, we probably didn't have the credit card set up, so it didn't work that way. So we added duplication. So it's dangerous to use the bank transaction bank feed because duplication can happen very easily. If you don't look into why some of these didn't clear the bank, that's how the duplication can happen. Eventually, when you're checking things off in your bank rec, you want the difference to go to 0. However, I don't know the difference, so you can always edit and you can always change this. I can change it to a 0, 0, go back in, see what the difference is. Continuously check things off. If you click on this deposit little circle on the top right-hand corner here, this will give you the option to select them all. What that means is now it will put a check mark that they all cleared the bank. And you can do it again, and then it will take all of the check marks off. So it also uncleared the ones that did go through the bank feed. So we could just easily check those back off because we know those cleared.
Dana, we do have a question.
Okay.
Sam is asking, for an expense, would I create a bill and an expense or just one of those?
Just one of those. So the expense represents the same thing as a bill. The expense is a quicker way of entering things because you go in, you enter it once. If you enter it as a bill, you're entering the bill and then you're paying the bill. So when you do an expense, it just puts it right into the expense account and the checking account. Where you enter the bill, it doesn't put it into the checking account because it holds it in accounts payable. Good question. Those are always confusing because there's so many different ways to enter things in the system. So I went ahead and just entered in what the ending balance difference was so that I could get this to 0. So the check mark means, hey, it works. We're done. So I'm able to hit finish now. If you drop the down arrow, the other option is to save for later or close without saving. So the save for later allows you to, if you can't get this to reconcile, it allows you to save your work and then you can come back for later. So I'm going to hit finish now. And I'm going to hit done. This is the reconciliation screen. So this is where we were when we began the reconciling. I'm going to click on history by account. This is where you're able to attach the bank statements. So if you get the bank statement electronically from the bank, you can download it into here. You can click on the attach. It then gives you the opportunity to drag and drop a file or browse to look for it. The other things here are viewing the report or printing the report. So you could view the report because this is how you know your balance sheet is correct. So the statement ending balance, that would have been what was on our bank statement. And then it will list any outstanding checks that haven't cleared the bank. And then it'll give us our register balance. So this then should tie back to the balance sheet, allowing you to know your checking account works. But if we scroll down and we look at the uncleared section, if there's something in here that's older than 2 months, say, we probably have some duplication going on because chances are things usually clear pretty quickly. So we always want to just verify that the dates in the uncleared section are fairly close to where we are. We don't want something in here more than 3 or 4 months old. Then we need to see if the check got lost or why they didn't. And a check may have gotten lost and then they did rebill you, so there is a duplicate. Just meaning then your expenses would be overstated. But I do want to show, so right in here, this register balance on January 31st is the 1974.50. So if we were to just go to reports, standard reports, and look at the balance sheet. When the balance sheet does come up, it is listing it right now from January to February. So you can see that's not my balance here. And that's because this date has to match the same date as the bank statement did. So once I get the date in line, then the balance for my checking is in line. That's how I know that I've reconciled things correctly and they do match what are in my books. Sometimes they don't match, and that has to do with dates. Sometimes people have things dated incorrectly. They're farther ahead than they should be, and it's reflective in here.
We have another question.
Okay.
So when you find a duplicate in the reconcile, do you delete the duplicate entry?
Yes, I do. So when I go to, and here's another spot under the year, you can find reconcile over here too. So it's in multiple places. But if I were to go back in here, and I can re-reconcile January if I had to, that's perfectly fine. You can do it multiple times. But yes, everything in here is live. So we could click on this squeaky car wash because we know this is a duplicate, and we can click on it. From there, we can hit edit. It will then bring us to that particular transaction. And then from here, we can click on the more, and then we can say delete. And then it'll permanently delete that transaction from our file. And I find that deleting them from this particular screen is the easiest because these are all live columns too. If I were to click on payment, it does sort it by dollar amount. So you can always scroll down and see if there is duplicate dollar amounts. Same with the dates. You can sort it by date, type, numbers, accounts, payees. You also have the option of just showing your payments or just showing your deposits. At times I will just go ahead and I will use the deposits when I start reconciling. If I'm not using the bank feeds, I do just click on deposits just because there's less data here. It's easier to see the deposits. There's usually less deposits than payments, so it's easier to click on deposits, check off what I need to check off. And again, you can use the little dot here. If you click on this gear, it allows you to change your account or your columns. If you don't like the columns that are here, you can uncheck some. Then again, I can click on payments and see my payments, and then I could click all, and then both will be here, payments and deposits. Now I can hit save for later. So now we went through rules. Were there any more questions on rules? I know rules can be quite confusing for people. Sometimes once you get the bank transactions hooked up, the computer, once they start recognizing your activity, will also be able to just create a rule for you. If they see that vendor continuously coming down, that rule will pop up and the system will want to create the rule for you. And you can do that, and then you could, or you don't have to. Sometimes when the rules get created, duplication starts happening. All right, back to the checking. Okay, let's go to plus create. There's also vendor credits in here. So if you were to receive a bill in the mail, but now there's a credit on it, you can enter it as a vendor credit. So what this means is I can enter the vendor for Hicks Hardware. And I know it goes to supplies because that's where I've been recording all the expenses there. And then I can put in the dollar amount that I got from them. Then when I pay a bill, if I use the pay bills section, this would allow the payment to them to be reduced by the credit. And then there's the option to fill in the receipt to prove why you were getting the credit.
Someone asked,
yep.
Sorry, Dana.
Nope. No, you're fine.
Someone asked, do you have any experience creating rules for bank transfers?
I have not created a rule for a bank transfer. I guess because the transfer button in here is so easy to use, I've never created a rule for a transfer. Could it be money out? Because I don't think the transfer would work because the category here is oh, there's transfer account. Yeah, you can do it. Sweet. I didn't even know. I guess I just assumed you use expense and checks and credit cards, but you can also do a transfer. Yes. Good question. We all learn.
And we've got another question.
Okay.
When you enter as a vendor credit, how do you match it with the original transaction?
It wouldn't get matched to the original transaction. It would get matched to a current transaction that you're doing. So when we do the vendor credits, we're entering bills and then we're taking the credit when we pay it. Let's go ahead and do that. So if I click vendor credit, I don't know if I saved that Hicks. I did. Okay, so I have a vendor credit in here for Hicks Hardware. So if I go to create a bill for Hicks Hardware, supplies. Sometimes QuickBooks is slower than me. All right, so if we do that, we do save and close. Now, if I go to pay bills, that's where I can see the credit to apply to this particular vendor. So pay bills. So in my pay bill screen should be Hicks. If I click on Hicks, you can see the $10 credit is here. Now I'm only going to pay them the $4.90, which should match the actual invoice that I received from them. So if I were to uncheck it, the credit applied column is only available for the one who has a credit that I've entered. So I have entered that Hicks Hardware vendor credit. And then in this credit applied column, you can see there is something that will pop up if I put this check mark here. So now the $10 is applied, showing me the payment will be $4.90, where originally it was $500. And then from here, I can hit save and close or save and print, whatever I need to do. But I didn't pick a bank account up here. So I do have to come up here and make sure I have a checking account. Or if I use the credit card, if I use the credit card to pay it, I can pick that as payment account. And then I can hit save and close. And it now applied that credit to that vendor. And then I only pay what I actually owe them. Oops. There's also the little button for paying down the credit card. So as I make a payment to my credit card, I would use the pay down credit card. I'd be able to select the credit card I'm making a payment to. The pay is optional, not required field, but the amount that I want to pay would be a required field. So I would put in the dollar amount when I'm making the payment. and then the bank account I'm using to pay the credit card. So I would use the checking. And then I can hit save and close. This then will apply the payment to the credit card account and then also reduce my checking account. There's also the spot for credit card credits. So if I were to receive my credit card statement and I got some rewards on there, so I use the rewards to reduce my credit card bill, I would be able to come in here and use, I could create an account for credit card rewards. It's not in my system, so I could add it. I will add a new one. It'll be income. I would use other income. And then I would be able to enter in however much the credit was for the rewards on my credit card. This then will reduce what I owe for the credit card. And then when I go to reconcile it or make a payment, this will help reduce it as if it was a payment for it. Or if you received a credit from a vendor, you'd be able to do it the same way. You could pick the vendor. You don't have to fill in the payee field, but for tracking reasons, sometimes we would rather have the payee filled out just for easier lookup for later. And again, you are able to attach something here too if you feel the need. And then you can hit save and close or save and new. Under the vendor section where we've been spending most of our time, there is the opportunity also to print checks. So if I've been creating items along the way all day, now I want to print my checks, you can go to the screen. It's like the print queue, and then this one here isn't set up. Oh, yeah, that's finished. But if I did have anything in here to be printed, they'd all be sitting in this queue. It's going to make sure you fill in the check number also first before you print. Sometimes the print or the checks don't line up real well because when you print, it's Adobe. If we go to the printer setup, it's going to ask you the type of check you're printing, and typically everybody uses the voucher. You can print a view, print a sample to hold up to your check to know if you need to go up or down. If I continue to say no, continue to set up. This section here allows you to move the dollar amount or words up or down or left or right. So if I were to hit the plus, you can see that the dollar amount is now moving up. So if when I print my checks, if something wasn't lining up accurately, I'd be able to come in here and move the dollar amount around. And again, you move it a little bit and then you're able to hit the view print to print a sample to hold up to your check so that you can get things above the line. Some checks come with lines, some don't come with lines, but a lot of the times the dollar sign is there and you want to get that spaced out so they can read the dollar amounts.
We do have a question about checks.
Okay.
So if a printed batch of checks prints incorrectly, but I accidentally clicked yes, they printed correctly, what is the best way or the easiest way to reprint multiple checks after the fact?
That is so hard because you have to go back individually to each check and check it to print. A lot of the times I'll just click on the plus create check because it happens to all of us. And then I just click into the clock here and then I just go check by check. And then you could either tell it to print again or fix the check number. I know that happens too often. And there's no easy way in QuickBooks to do different things like that at once. It's kind of a bummer. The only section in that's cool with QuickBooks, one of the quickest things, if you were to use an incorrect account number for a particular vendor, you can go into the vendor and change the expense account very quickly. If I were to click on a vendor, in here, you can change the category. You'd be able to change them in here. But that's the only thing quick in QuickBooks. Otherwise, it's always opening up the transaction to change it. And sometimes QuickBooks' response is very slow and you have to sit and wait. But you at least can open it up and change it. QuickBooks is user-friendly that way. It's not so permanent, but it's also not as quick as you want it to be at times. I know it gets frustrating. And from the vendor screen too, you can write checks, pay vendors. You know, I'm in this call telephone vendor right now. I can edit the vendor, change anything that I forgot to enter in before. But under the new transactions, if I click the down arrow, I am able to do different things for this particular vendor. So if I had to write a check to them or an expense or a bill, I can just click the check. It will then fill in the vendor for me. So as you can see now, Cal Telephone is in there. And then I can just go ahead and write the check from here or print later. All right, we are approaching an hour already. Are there any other questions that I can answer quickly? All right, I'm just gonna share a different screen here real quick with my contact information. I've got my email address listed and my phone number that if you were to have any questions after the presentation, you could feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to help you. As I said before, I know a lot about QuickBooks and I enjoy helping people. Were there any other last minute questions that anybody would have?
Nothing's come in yet, so
okay. All right. We're also looking for ideas for any other QuickBooks presentations that anybody would be interested in. Whether it be working with the customers or going deeper into the vendors or doing the billing for the vendors. If you had any ideas or other things you would like us to do a presentation on, feel free to reach out. I am not able to do presentations on the payroll because you have to have a subscription for that. So that is more on an individual basis. But other items, if you had things that you would want to be shown or explained in more detail, you'll be receiving a survey after the presentation, and you can go ahead and leave us any ideas you may have for further presentations. But I want to thank all of you for taking time today to hang out with me and let me show you around QuickBooks. And again, just let me know if you were to have any questions, and have a great afternoon.